and we've got like, I think 6 or 7 registered for online. So a nice mix. Sorry for the delay. We have just finished our council session and we're now going to do our community session. Mind you, the information that we're presenting is very much similar and it's all publicly accessible. So the same information is accessible to you. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Trudy Bartlett from Regional Development Australia for Darling Downs Southwest. So we look after Toowoomba all the way through to Quilpie, to the border, 10 councils. And I have with me for 4 days Kat from ID Profile. Now, Kat lovingly says, Trude, you've got me from 4 days. You can work me as hard as you want and I'll go anywhere. So we're doing 8 councils in 4 days, 2,100 kilometres and 10 presentations all up. So as you can see from the delay today, we've pretty much smashed our driving and our presentation time back to front. There's not much time in there for anything else, hence why I feed her fantails and call them lunch. So today is about taking you through this tool. So from a regional development point of view, we're funded to get more grants to the region, progress more projects and to feed back to the federal government. Now, as part of that getting more grants to the region, saying we think and we feel this is a pretty project for our community does not cut it in a competitive grant space. So what we want you to do is have data that you can use to put in better submissions and applications. Now, if you're not in the grant space, you're in the business case, we also want to give you data that helps you make a better business decision. And then certainly for our councils, we want them to have access to data to make better councils' decision as to what is the better thing to fund, to support, what does the future look like, what do we need. So Kat's going to run you through this tool. For those in the room, online, and even those that registered but maybe didn't turn up, you do actually get the recording from today. So please don't feel like you might be struggling to keep up because we go through a lot of information very quickly. So what we're doing is about 90% of what you're going to see today is publicly available. And it's available if you look at the on the screen, there's the profile.id.com.au/RDA. But the easy way to remember it, and you will get sent the link direct with the recording, if you even just Google Profile ID Darling Downs or Economy ID Darling Downs, you will find this page pretty easily. But we do send you the direct link when you get the recording because then you can save it in your favourites and go on it and tour around it. So we're going to run through the community profile, which I know we just did a census. The census data won't be in there yet, but it's the best data we've got right now. And the government and funding bodies know that. And then we're going to run you through the green tab, which is the economic profile, which has 1,100 pieces of information. So we're not going through all of them today, funny enough, but we want you to be able to get an idea of how you can find info in there. And then if we've got some time, we'll show you some economic impact tools that aren't publicly available. You do need a password to access them. Now here in Boulogne, you've got both Garnet and Steph from the council who can access them and do those reports for you. The admin email that you got sent from Tim to register for this, Tim can do those reports for you if you want them. In my email, I can do them for you if you want them. So it's pretty easy. You just send us an email and we will do them for you. But today what we want to do is show you what one of those reports look like so you get an idea of why you would want them, okay? Today also we're going to show you a few little things about how your region is comparing to Queensland and to Australia because I think there's a lot of good news in there. And yeah, apart from that, I'm going to hand over to Kat and she's going to run you through all of that. So thanks everyone for being patient with some of the IT struggles. All right, Kat, you're it.
I'm going to go as fast as I can through the red tool.
We've got a bit of an echo.
Should maybe turn it?
I think if you turn...
Little delay's a bit annoying. That delay is a bit annoying.
Like,
We were going the other day. Were you at the meeting?
you know,
We had a meeting.
Okay, that one's got to go on.
It was going. It wasn't. It was working. Okay.
try and get rid of the echo. That's bad.
Cooey.
Yeah, there you go. It's working. Yours go.
Can you turn your screen? Is that better?
I'll just mute that.
Must be two microphones.
Up better?
Yeah.
I'll turn that off. Okay.
You guys can hear Kat anyway. We don't really need the mic. I think we don't have the mic, then these guys don't get echo. Lorraine, you can hear us better now without an echo? Yeah, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, so as Trudy mentioned, you guys have access to lots of information and data for this region, which is really, really important for, delivering and developing grant applications, but also for, any business programs or things that you want to run in your community, being able to back that up with some statistics to be able to show the changes and what's happening in your community. So the first place we go to is this community profile, and it's the RED tool, and it's all about your census information. So even though when you're looking at this and you're saying, well, it's 2016 data, it's old, yes it is, but it is what the funding bodies, state and federal government, are using to be able to assess your applications and I guess marry up the information that you're providing with what they see on their screens in Brisbane or Canberra. Okay, so that's probably the first thing. The RED tool is all about your census information, so it's all about your community. The green tool, the economic profile, is all about your economy, and it's all about how your industries are performing over time. It's about your local employment. When, speaking to the CEO and talking about advocacy, when you're advocating for this community, it's about how do we compare to the rest of Australia, to the rest of Queensland. So we can start to showcase, well, the drought has taken a bigger effect on us here than it has in other localities, therefore we should be accessing more funding or whatever that might look like. So the first thing I'm going to show you, because next year we are going to see start to see some of the outcomes of the census that was just held. Now you can come on here, and at the moment it's showing all of the data for RDA, Darling Downs and Southwest, but we can actually drill down into Balonne Shire or the Southwest Red region, which also shows Balonne Shire as well. So, and the Southwest Red region, do you want to just explain?
Yeah, so the Southwest Red region is here, Maranoa, Merway, Paru, Baloo and Quilpie. So just those 6 councils. So what we did was some of those councils, their data is so small it doesn't show up in some of these graphs. And what we did was we put the 6 Southwest councils together. There's a council of mayors for that 6 councils too, because usually whatever's going on in one of those councils, there is a flow-on effect to a fair few of you out here. But also it helped for those councils whose numbers were so low that, or their population is so low that they didn't have data to use for some of their grants. So a really good example is Baloo, total population of only 255 people. So some things just don't even show up when they go into theirs. So what they can do for a lot of their grant applications is use the Southwest Red data, which is still accurate and indicative of the region.
And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to drill down into your shire, and we can see their total population 4,321, and we can see how that's changed over time since 2006. So we've had some population decline. You can export this entire page into a PDF and print it out. What it does is it just provides me with some tiles on what's happening in your shire compared to other regions. So median age 40, so a little bit older than the rest of Queensland. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander population, a little bit higher, or much higher than the rest of Queensland. So when you start to think about funding in some of those categories, it's about coming on here and being able to showcase why you think that's important for your region. Couples with children, less than Queensland, but the same as the Darling Downs region. Lone person households, medium high density, medium weekly rent, when we're talking about livability, talks about medium weekly household income. So all of these things around, that you can use for advocacy and for project support is all in here. Overseas born, much less than Queensland. Households renting, higher than the rest of the state. University qualifications, much less. We look at trade qualifications, even less. So we can start to think about, but we've got a high participation rate compared to Queensland, which is interesting. So you can start to get a feel for, what this community might look like, some areas where there are potential opportunities for funding when we look here at university qualifications as well as our trade qualifications, much less. So there are some things around skilling and upskilling that could be supported in this region as well. When we come down the bottom, sorry guys, I'm flicking around. When we come down the bottom, we actually have this, what I sort of call my menu of items of the things that you can find within the tool. So if you want to look at dwelling types, or you want to look at a household summary for this region, you can come straight down here and I can click straight on household summary and be taken straight to that chart as well. When I come to the top of the page, once again, export that into your PDF. The next place I'll be going straight away after the census is looking at how old are we and our 5-year age groups. Now, the beauty of the ID product is it doesn't just show what your dominant features in your community are, it also shows how you're changing over time, which is really, really important because you can create projects for people that live here now, but what you want to know is how that is actually shifting and changing. So here we come in and we can see our area is, we've still got it on Balonne. Our benchmark area is what we want to compare ourselves to. So if you've got a grant that is with the state government, you want to compare yourself to Queensland. Okay, if you're going for a grant with the Australian government, with the feds, you will want to compare with Australia so you can show where you fit in comparison to those areas. So here I've got Balonne Shire compared to Queensland, and I'm coming straight down to my chart. So you can export those data tables, guys, if you need to, and get the exact numbers. But here I just want to look straight at my chart so I can see exactly what's happening in our community. As you can see, there's some dominance in this younger age category compared to Queensland, and we've also got some dominance compared to Queensland in sort of our 45 plus in these areas here. Where we dip out is in our working population. What we then can look at is, well, how is that changing? So whilst we're dominant in our younger age groups, we have an ageing population in our community, and we've got this shift towards ageing, which means that we need to start to have a think about, in terms of our industries, our healthcare and social services, things that are like our dwelling structures that we provide for people to live in, ageing in place around safety and security, all of those sorts of things. So it's important, and it's also important to have a look at this area where we say, why are we losing these people? What's happening in these areas around jobs? That we're losing people out of our community, because when we lose these guys, we lose these guys as well, and that has an impact on schools and other social services. When you come down the bottom, guys, you can see this dominant and emerging group analysis. So that just gives me basically everything that I've just spoken about in Word form in this particular area. So you're able to use that yourselves and copy and paste it straight into a report, or you can just export this entire page into a Word or PDF document, okay, and attach it to your applications. When you come down here, guys, you always get the source. And that's really important as well, because if someone says, where did you find this information, you're able to go direct to the source, and you can actually click on the Census of Population and Housing and it'll take you directly to those pages, okay? So it's important to understand that as well.
There's no plagiarism. We've funded this so that you can just pull all that out and copy it into staff, put it in PowerPoint, put it in reports, do it all. There's a share function. You can even put it on a social media. That's all in there for you guys to do.
Yeah.
So, agree. So that's, you've done it for the Balonne Shire. So do we have access to this sort of information as easy as this for Toowoomba, for example?
Yeah. So under the RDA Darling Downs Southwest, you'll see that the drop down actually takes in you can click on all of the 10 councils added together, which saves me having to add them up. Then there's each of the 10 as a separate entity, and then there's that 6 Southwest, just because of that small population numbers. So if you click on Toowoomba, you'll get Toowoomba's stuff.
And I'm comparing that to Queensland. I can come down here and have a look at Toowoomba, and you can see they're quite dominant in this area as well, and you can see how people are starting to age in place through here.
Now, the benchmark area, can we do other councils in the benchmark area? I just can't remember.
I think so.
Yeah, so you could actually compare Toowoomba direct to you.
Well, that's what I was thinking of going to Winnie, which is a close town to us. Have a look at what developments they've done and see how it's changed their dynamic, and then have a look at what we could be doing and how we change our dynamic. That's
so within the link we'll send you, which is the RDA link, you can get to all those 10 councils of the RDA, you can compare the 10. But on the ID profile homepage, there is the other RDAs who have bothered to fund this tool and the other councils who have bothered to fund this tool. So just say you are after Noosa, for some reason. It's under the RDA Sunshine Coast. You might not see the council listed in the homepage, but if you go to the It's Related RDA, then you would be able to find Noosa, but you just probably couldn't do the comparison. But within our 10 councils, you can do the direct comparison. And then there's some councils that you can't get at all because they haven't funded it, whereas your council co-funded this with us, so you're lucky to have it.
So is it possible to say, right, on our weather, the things that I'm used to looking at is weather, and choose the next 5 closest seasons? Could we choose the next 5 closest towns to us in Australia?
Yes. So say, for example,
Not in location,
Livingston Shire, where I live, do a lot of comparative analysis with Mandurah in Western Australia. So you can do things like that if you're looking at other areas in the country that might be quite similar in South Australia or that sort of thing. We cover, I think, 300 and something councils across Australia at the moment with this particular data. So I just go around and help them understand how to use it and what you would be looking for and things like that. It's an important way of being able to look at your data sets as well, is to be able to say, well, I know that that particular area in Victoria implemented this policy and this is the outcome of that sort of thing. So yeah, absolutely. And have a think about that. Have a think about what areas you might be wanting to look at, and you can email Trudy and then she'll get in contact with us and say, can we have a look at that data or can we have a comparison between those 2 areas? So we do it a lot for the Sunny Coast. Because they're always looking for opportunities and they're just very good at that. They're very good at sort of, being bold and that sort of thing. So, yeah, certainly. But here you can get the information for any of these council areas.
Need to become a marginal voting area to get funding.
So some of the other things we can look at on this tool, guys, are the who are we? So you can start to have a think about birthplace. So a lot of councils will use that sort of information around, things like language spoken at home. Now, it's not going to be, a huge non-English speaking population, but what it does talk to us about is what languages are prevalent in your community. So Afrikaans, Tongan, Filipino, and then how that has changed over time. So there has been this small shift in people speaking Filipino in your community. Now, the reason why that's important is for things like disaster management and stuff like that. So when I worked for Cairns Council many, many years ago, we were providing disaster management information in 2 different languages. Now I think they're doing it in 12 different languages based on their changes through the census and being able to look at this data and say we've got, more than just an Australian and Japanese population. We have a number of different languages in our community now, and we need to be able to connect with those people. So there's different ways to be able to use the data. What do? We have information around that. Household summaries is always a good one to look at, to be able to see what sort of housing do we need to provide in the community and the council needs to have a think about. So what is the person's relationship to each other person in the household? So you always get that question from the census. I'm going to go straight down to my chart so we can see couples without children, most predominant in the community, followed by our couples with children. Then when we come down, we want to have a look at, well, how are we changing? So here we've had this big reduction, which follows your age demographic, and we saw those people escaping out of this area with their children. We can see couples with children declining, and then we've got our lone persons increasing. So thinking about what does that mean for our community as well around safety and security. So once again, dominant and emerging groups as well. So this makes us think. So that what we're seeing here, our reduction in couples with children is something that you would be looking at very closely and saying, okay, we need to have a think about what that means in terms of schooling. What is the driver of those people moving out of the community? So I'm going to come straight down here to my job seeker information because it's important information to support some of your grant applications at the moment. So we can see when we come down, this is about people who are accessing over-the-counter payments for job seeker or youth allowance in your community. And what it tells us is that in the RDA Darling Downs Southwest region, we've had an additional 1,477 people since COVID accessing up to last month, June. We had those people still accessing benefits from our community. So this comes from the Department of Social Services. It's the old unemployment benefit. We can see in Belong, there's an additional 13 people at this point in time accessing that compared to March 2020. This is a way of being able to talk about the impact of COVID on your region in your grant applications. This is a way to be able to display it. And you can see here at the peak of COVID, there was an additional 98 people in your community accessing those benefits. Now, on the job seeker payment and youth allowance, you're able to earn, I think, or you're able to participate in work maybe for up to 10 hours or something like that. I'm going to have to clarify that because I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it is.
I'm pretty sure it's 10 hours. But so what we can see here is that some of these people may actually be on the books, but what it's about is also looking at not only the unemployment, but also the underemployment, where people are still wanting to access payments to support their income. So it's a really good one to look at. So that's from, you know, March to June. We're looking at that additional 98, whereas now that figure has been reduced to 13. So there's been some work done to be able to get some people back into jobs in this community as well. So lastly, we've got all these explanatory notes, guys. We've got geography notes, all that sort of thing. And we've also got this report writer. So we can come down here and we can actually get the reports for your particular area. So if you come into downloads, reports, you can come in here if you want to look at your 5-year age groups like we were looking at before, birthplace. If we want to look at highest level of schooling, our household summary, we can come in here, come down the bottom and send ourselves the report in a PDF or a Word. So all of that information, you know, without having to troll through the tool, you can actually, if you're someone who wants to just sit and read it, you're able to just send yourself that report and print it out. Okay, I'm going to go straight over to my economic profile. Now, the economic profile is a little bit different. So the community profile is more about the census. You have those other little bits of information that get updated monthly, but most of it is about the census. The economic profile is really all about your economy. So it's all about your industries, and that gets updated every year in about March, okay? And it gets updated in March for the previous financial year. Okay, so at the moment, this data is out to June 2020. Okay, this data will get updated once again in March, and then it will be probably updated again once some of the census information comes through as well. So this has over 1,100 pieces of data, so I'm not going to go through all of those. What I want to do though is to show you some key places that you should look at every year when the new data comes out, the first places to go. So here's my menu of items that come into this. So we can look at our resident workers, our local workers. If you want to tell a story about, we feel like we have an ageing workforce in a particular industry, we can look at those sorts of things as well, our workforce characteristics, all of that sort of stuff. So let's start to drill down. So here, this is for RDA Darling Downs Southwest. When I come onto my economic indicators, the first thing I want to look at is my gross product. So what are we producing in our community? What is the value of that production? And we come onto here, and once again, it's as simple as coming on and selecting our drop down. And we can see since 2011, 2012, we've had this real fall away in GRP in our community. And I'm comparing that to Queensland. And you can see here how Balonne Shire is moving away from Queensland, which straight away, if you're talking about an advocacy document or your grant application, this would be a good place to start, is to be able to say, well, look, since, you know, I think some of the ladies were saying drought declared in 2012, the impact that has had on GRP up to June 2020 has been quite significant. And you can see, once again, you're moving away from Queensland, and we look at the actual data, and we can see over the last 10 years, we've had only 2 of those have been positive growth in this community. Okay, so straight away, there's some great data that you can use to support some of your arguments. Local employment is actually a little bit different. So we can see here, we haven't had yes, we've had a fall away since 2012, but it hasn't been as dramatic as perhaps your GRP has. And I think when we went down to your data, we were saying that
Working the same, they're getting paid.
still only 2 years of positive growth in employment over that period as well. So these are some areas that you guys can think about to use as part of your application, and we would be encouraging you to do that as well. So the places I've been is gross product, local employment, and then I'll head to building approvals. And this tends to give me a bit of an idea of what perhaps might be coming in the next financial year around stimulus in the community. So we can see about the same as 2019, 2020, 2020, 21. However, there's a little bit more residential in those building approvals as well. So this information comes direct from council. So we get that information and it gets uploaded in, we get it through the ABS, but it gets updated from the catalogues there into our data sets. So it's another one that you can look at and say, well, what's actually happening in Goondiwindi with regards to building approvals this year? And so that can sometimes help to give you guys an idea of what might be happening in your community as well. Quarterly economic indicators have just been introduced, and the reason we've just introduced them is because people are looking for more timely information. It's still only out to June 2020, but we're about to update with the September information. And that's really, you can see the impact that COVID has had on Gundy when you come down here. That's the COVID quarter there, $14 million loss during that one quarter. Yeah, I just wanted to show that for Gundy because it's a border location. We've tended to find that border locations have been hit a lot harder.
I was just worried I'd run you so into the ground that
she doesn't know where she is anymore. Yes. Border locations and tourist locations have been hit really hard by COVID. So here we can see that, and you just have to look at this quarterly change in GRP since June 2017, and you can see those quarterly losses across the board, mainly due to drought. So that's our gross regional product. So the reason why that's important is because that quarter there is that COVID quarter. And some of that would be in relation to COVID as well. And we can also look at that in terms of local jobs. Okay, so when we come down here, we can see 85 jobs lost in that COVID quarter. So the impact of COVID has had a bigger impact on jobs than it potentially has had on GRP, but not as hard a fall in terms of jobs as Queensland, which is no surprise because you're not a tourist, a big tourist destination like some of the others that are so dependent on international tourism, particularly North Queensland.
So has this got like grants to industries and stuff? Like government money that's been given to industry?
Yeah, it would take into consideration that when you're looking at your data, it's about expenditure in the community. So if there's been a grant that's been expended in this community, this will pick that up, okay? Because it'll be about, you know, how that money is flowing through the economy. Because all of this information is built on what we call a local government multiplier, and it comes from information through tax information from this region. It comes from national and state accounts, which take into consideration your export capabilities and things like that. It comes from labour force survey, household expenditure survey. So there's a whole range of, whole range of data sets that come in to create what is a local government program for your shire. Same with every other shire that we look at. It all gets split into those local government areas instead of using what we would call state-based multipliers for individual regions. We're creating multipliers for local government areas. Okay. So the next thing I'm just going to show you before we get stuck into the model is this employment by industry. Okay, and we can see ag, forestry and fishing is the largest employer. And what I normally do is come on here and change my comparison year. Okay, so you can show the impact that perhaps the drought has had by looking at, if you say we were drought declared in 2012-13, we can click that year and actually have a look at what has been the impact on the ag sector in terms of employment since we were drought declared. So you can see 80 less jobs in the community in that particular sector. Okay, what I normally do is come on here in March and I'll look at local government areas in terms of what has happened over the previous year. Okay, so the previous two financial years, so 18-19 to 19-20, and we can see there's been this addition of jobs in agriculture of 191 jobs. Okay, we lost 10 in ag, forestry, fishing support. We lost a couple in fishing, hunting and trapping, but we added these jobs in agriculture. Now that can be a little bit deceptive because it's about full-time equivalent. So if you've got farmers or people who are working on farms that are working the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs, that's one person now working longer hours to create less. Okay, so we're actually doing more to almost create less at the moment. And that tends to happen during a drought. So yeah, certainly. So here we can see, we'll come straight down here to ag, forestry, fishing, and then we can see where we've had job losses. So a lot of this would have been COVID quarter, and we can see we've had that growth in jobs in ag, forestry and fishing. But as I say, that can be a little bit deceptive in the agricultural sector. And once again, you get that dominant and emerging group analysis down below. If you want to really drill down into your ag sector, you can come onto this industry sector analysis. You can come down here and you can click on agriculture, and it will talk to me about how many people are employed in your shire at the moment, 2019-20. How many are full-time equivalent, which you can see the discrepancy there. Output, value add, exports, all of this information on your ag sector. So RDA Sunshine Coast would be a good example of an organisation that reports yearly on what is made up of their agricultural sector. So they will come straight onto here and grab the data directly from here. This is what we contribute in terms of our value add to the Sunshine Coast. This is what we contribute in terms of our international exports, all of that sort of thing. And when you come down here, you can see most of your agricultural sector is made up of domestic exports, a little bit of local sales and a little bit of international exports as well. Okay, and you can do that for any industry that you want to look at, right down to your healthcare or retail industries as well. I know I'm running through this fast, guys, but sometimes it's the easiest way. I'm going to go to the economic impact model because this is what most of you will need if you're applying for funding. Okay, so here, so does anyone
so these are the tools that aren't publicly available.
Yes.
Everything else up until that last sentence that Kat said, publicly available. You can get on there, you can click on all of those things down the left-hand side, or you can scroll to the bottom, click on all of those things across the bottom. As you can see, there's lots of information in there. You can't break it. Just be really clear on what's your argument and what are you trying to prove or show before you go in there. And as we said, you can come to us and we can assist with that. And then only this one is where you will need to send some information through to the council or ourselves, and we can do this report for you.
We can run this model. So if you've got a project that you are going for, so say for example, I did one before I was just on the phone to Toowoomba Regional Council before, and I could see them ringing me, so they're obviously having a panic attack. But we've got Balonne Shire, and what this was, it's a sewage treatment plant at Cambodia. Okay, it's $5.6 million, and what they want to know is what is the economic impact of the construction of this particular project, and what is the economic impact of the operational phase of this particular project. So when you guys built your community centre, we helped Steph run this model for your community centre to be able to say, well, this is the amount of investment that's going to go into building this particular community centre, and then this is how many people will be working there from then on. So we can run that, and when you fill out your grant application, they will ask you for specific bits of information to support your grant application. So here we've got we select Balonne Shire because it's in your shire. And then we come down here and we say building construction. Okay, you can either choose sales or jobs. Okay, so most of the time your building construction phase is going to be in sales. And for this particular treatment plant, it was $5.6 million. So we run that through the model. And we can see there the information that this gives us. Not all of this is going to be required for your grant application. The most important pieces are going to be your direct impact on the building construction sector, your industrial and consumption impact, and your total impacts. Okay, so the other thing that I should say is you're looking at your output column here and you're looking at your local jobs column. Okay, so output and local jobs is really where we're starting to focus in. Okay, so the first thing that that the model shows is what is the starting position of Balonne Shire in both the building construction sector and then all industries. Okay, so sometimes the funding body will say, well, what is the value of your construction sector at the moment? You would say $10.78 million, okay, in output, and there's 20 local jobs. Okay, now the impact of 5.6 million going into this project, that is your direct impact. So you can see when it says, so the grant application, the one for Toowoomba, said, what is the direct impact of your construction phase for this particular project? It is 5.6 million. Then it will say, what is the indirect impact on the community for this particular project? And that is your industrial and consumption impacts added together. So your industrial impact is about when you're building this project, you need to get building materials, you need to get designs done, you need to get all of those sorts of things. So the flow on of what that means when you purchase those items. Okay, so that's your industrial impact. It's all about your supply chain and as money moves through your supply chain. Your consumption impact is about the people who are working on that project, where they are spending their money and how that is shifting and moving through the economy as well. And that's where you get these type 1 and type 2 multipliers, which, to be honest, you can just pretty much ignore that. It's just there in case a funding body says, what was the multiplier that you used to create these values? Okay, now, so we've got 5.6 million is your direct impact, and then to get your indirect impact, you're adding together your industrial and consumption impacts, and then you get your total impact on the Balonne Shire economy is 8.51 million and 20 jobs. Okay, so does that make sense? Kind of, yep. And then we come down to the bottom and you get your impact on the Queensland economy. If your grant application is with the state government, which the one I think for Toowoomba is through the state government, your total impact on the Queensland economy is 9.01 and 22 local jobs. Okay, that's as you purchase things outside of your shire. Okay, so if you're utilising goods and services in Toowoomba or Brisbane, that goes through their economy, so the way the multiplier works. Okay. When you come down the bottom here, guys, you get all of this information, impact on output. So you can read through all of this. There is the direct addition of 5.6 annual output in the building construction sector would lead to an increase in indirect demand for intermediate goods and services, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you get all of this information that you can use directly in your report. Okay, so you can take all of this information and attach it to your report. You can export it into Word or PDF. Suggestion to export it into Word and take out all the material that you are not required to provide as part of your application. Try and keep it as simple as you possibly can. Okay, so that's the operational phase of that particular project. Then what will happen, sorry, construction phase. That's the construction phase. Then what will happen is you then have your operational phase, which is waste collection. I'll put water supply, sewage and drainage services. I'm just going to see if that's got enough data in it. Because what happens now is we've got Balonne. This is your ongoing impact, and it's going to create 6 jobs, this particular project. So 6 people will be working out of this sewage plant in Canberra. Okay, so I'm submitting that through the model. We do have enough data. So we can see here in water supply, sewerage and drainage services, this is our starting position once again. Then we've got our direct impact, $1.86 million and 6 jobs, which is our starting point. So we're looking at output and we're looking at local jobs. And then we've got our industrial and consumption impacts. Okay, and then we've got our overall total impact on the Belong Shire economy, which is what the funding body is looking at, 2.76 million and 9 local jobs as that flow on of those 6 jobs goes through the community. Okay, and then we've got our multipliers. We come down here, if we're looking at Queensland, it's 2.87 million. Okay, so that's and 9 jobs. So that's how the model works. Okay, and then you come down and you get all of your reporting below that you can attach.
So a good grant application, if they allow you to have attachments, would attach some of this stuff as evidence. Some don't allow you to put in other attachments, which is fine. Where you address their criteria, your words should be scattered with loads of numbers. Like all just words usually means that you're waffling and you haven't got a lot of evidence to back it up. This is the tool to help you get some evidence to back that up.
Yeah. This is about the numbers. So really, you know, the page that you need is this impact summary, because a lot of them now are asking for you to not attach documents. They're asking for, you know, I noticed the Toowoomba one today, they sent it through to me and it had in there, you know, what is the indirect number of jobs that this is going to create and why? You know what I mean? And what industry are you, you know, what industry will it create jobs in? So it's creating jobs in the building construction industry during the construction phase, and it's going to be adding this much in output and this much in indirect jobs or direct jobs. Then you might want to talk about the indirect. So you're talking about, well, the indirect, you know, impact of this particular project will create X, Y, Z. So this is really the table that you need to get your head around. And that's where the likes of Trudy or myself or Tim can help you, or Stephanie or Garnet from the council, to be able to run that model and be able to help you interpret what it's saying.
And we don't care which one of us you come to. We have like this no wrong door. Just open the door and one of us will get to you with the report. Okay?
Is there a cost to it?
No. So we do have like some grant writers that float around the place that come to us a lot for some of these. DAF at one stage, when they were doing all the economic development grants, were coming a lot to us for these. And so we actually sat with them and gave them some additional training and gave them the password, because they just do so many of them. And when we do that for like DAF's obviously state government, but even when we do it for some of the grant writers, our proviso is you can charge for your grant writing services. You are just never to charge for the report, because we already fund it so that you've got access to it. Yeah. So that's the only proviso we make, but we have had some people who use it a lot. And like the National Indigenous Agency, which is a federal government agency that happened to be down the hallway from my office, they're like, "Should we love this tool? How do we get access to it?" And I said, "Well, I can at least give you access to Darling Downs Southwest. And ideally, I want them to have access to Darling Downs Southwest so we win more of them. If they haven't got access to everything else, well, that's, you know, too bad, so sad." So this is our competitive advantage for our region to have this tool.
Got a couple of questions.
Yep.
What grants? What, you mentioned for the grant application, I didn't come here because I'm putting in a grant application. What grant applications are there? And what sort of funding is there available? We hear there was, on marginal seats, there was a lot of car parks being built. I'm not looking for a car park.
Yeah. So on the RDA Darling Downs Southwest website, Tim, our admin assistant, updates the grants that are available across our region every month. If you join our newsletter, he'll send you out a newsletter reminder just saying, by the way, I've updated them. But the grants actually sit there 24/7.
It's worth getting on, because there's so many
lots
grants.
on
There's
Facebook,
just so many,
Facebook.
you know, and some of them are, you know, are big grants, like the Building Better Regions Fund is a big grant that councils can put forward, you know, massive projects into. There's road building grants.
At the front, there's all funded, well, co-funded by grants.
tourist grants for building tourism infrastructure.
TQ
Things
got
like that.
event grants,
Yeah,
lots of
event
grants for
grants.
events.
There's a
There
whole
are
range of
business
things.
grants, but a lot of them are for not-for-profit.
Having said that, I've applied for quite a few grants. A lot of them are a waste of bloody time.
Yeah,
They're oversubscribed. The criteria is so strict, we can't access them, or the reporting is so ridiculous. Premier's grant a couple of years ago for tourism, $3,000 grant, cost me over 2,000 and 5 different reports, endless reporting. It just wiped out any benefit. They're just absolutely ridiculous, some of these grants. There's a tourism one going down now. Minimum economic impact for your event, 100,000. That wipes out 95% of event organisers in the Shire. That's way beyond that. For a piddly bit of money, for $3,000, not even worth putting the submission in. So a lot of these criteria for these grants, the people who write them need to come out and get a reality check and really find out, retweak them so that they are beneficial to a lot more either community groups or event organisers that can access them and don't chew it up in endless, mindless reporting.
Yeah, so if we were looking at putting up, branching into a tourism business, for example, and we wanted to put up fancy tents.
Are you a for-profit or not-for-profit?
I'm for profit. I'm not doing it for profit, not doing it for charity. Yeah, so
That's always the first question.
Yeah.
There's a group of grants for business and there's a group of grants for not-for-profits.
yeah.
But there's the
There are the business ones
COVID
too.
grants and things like that. What about those grants?
Yeah, but I agree with David.
Yeah.
A lot of them, there's no such thing as free money.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as free money. You still have to earn your grant. And this is one of the tools to help you earn that grant. Like at the end of the day, it is taxpayers' money
Yep.
that they're giving to somebody, and they've got processes in place to make sure that it's a good spend of our money
Yep.
as taxpayers. I agree with you, David. It could be streamlined massively so it doesn't get taken up with a lot of time. However, a lot of them are for not-for-profit organisations, and you do have to earn them. And same with the business grants. Like I have businesses come to me and it's like they're just in trouble and want free money, and I'm like, nobody is about to give you money if you're not financially viable already.
Yep.
Because that's too much of a risk. Where government is risk adverse at the best of times, but certainly it's taxpayers' money.
Yeah, so the grants is probably not where I'm here. Where the movement of the population is and that sort of stuff. So if I was going to open up a new business, say if I was going to open up
Use it for that, yeah.
a towel manufacturing.
Yep.
And where should I do it? Then that brings into the possibility of applying for co-funding
Yes.
stuff where I'm bringing new industry into the area.
Yep.
And do you really want this in your area?
Yes.
Or do you want me to take it somewhere else? I'll take it to the Sunshine Coast because they're going to co-fund with me.
Yep.
Because I'm going to be there for the next 5 years or 10 years or whatever.
And-
so that's sort of the stuff that I'm.
Yeah, so
Yes.
you'll find a lot of that in
Yes.
here, and it's an awesome tool to use for that due diligence before you buy a business, before you extend a business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looking at who is your
You'd
customer.
you'd use this data, and in the downloads where it has reports, you'd click on the things that actually are relevant to you and your business, and then that report you can take to your bank for a good feasibility study, and viability for the business.
What about floor rental space for an industrial building and things like that? Does it go into that? Can you go into that sort of detail?
Not really.
No,
Not really.
Up there it said something about average weekly rent,
Mm-hmm.
$150 a week or something in St George. Does it do that sort of stuff for business?
Not for commercial.
No.
Okay.
That's a good point. I like that.
I hope those online have been able to hear all the questions, or have at least worked out what they were from the answers.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sensitivity analysis there's obviously based on assumptions. Is it stuff that we can ask you to do? What happens if instead of the population going down, the population comes up?
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not sure what's going on. What happens if the water availability goes down, or what happens if the seasons more productive, like it was in a different era. Or like I haven't thought about any reason I'd want that information, but I'm just thinking about the sensitivity analysis because
This isn't the tool so much that would do it. However, we can put you in front of economists that can do some of that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then those guys are going to charge you for it, but yeah, definitely we're a bit bound, and some of them are within the ID team.
How many years of data does this pick up on? Does it go back to 1973?
So in the community profile, I can show you.
So for those online, the question was how many years does the data go back for?
Let me see. Oh.
I feel like I'm yelling all the time, but I know sometimes I don't hear it.
Yeah, well, it's got the, what are these speakers?
So right back to, oh yeah, here's my comparison year. What am I doing? Losing my mind. Back to 1991. Okay?
Yeah.
Yep. The economic data, I think, is 2001. But we can go, can we go back further than that?
But again, if it
91's
was something for some reason you specifically need, send us an email and we'll see if we can find it.
I know there's data out there
Yeah, 2000.
back to well before then, because I've looked at it myself, and you buy the book, and you got to read through it, and
Not at the local government level. Does that make sense? So we can get data back to 70s, 50s, all of that sort of thing for Australia, but not necessarily drilling down to this shire.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So we can look at trends and.
No, I was just curious as to the shire stuff and how long it's been going for, because some of the, if you're going to be making a decision on it, you want to make sure it's based on not 3 years worth of data. It's actually worth.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, this one goes back to 2001.
Yep.
And the other stuff is 1991. So, and what we do is each time the census comes in, because ABS areas change. So what we do is we have to then change all the years back to 1991. So say, for example, when Queensland amalgamated, then de-amalgamated and all of that sort of thing, we had to then go back and recalibrate back to 1991. So you've got to cut out those geographies again as boundaries change and that sort of thing.
That was for the shire.
So yeah, so you can check, so then you're comparing apples and apples, because as a shire's boundary changes, so say for example Toowoomba, you know, as their boundary changes, to be able to compare their data in 1991, we have to then recut all of those areas.
All the ones that are grouped in.
Change and spit out the ones that no longer are part of Toowoomba Regional Council and put the ones in that are.
Kat, you want to quickly show the event impact calculator? We're just going to show you the event impact calculator. I know we have gone a little bit over time.
The other one I was interested in was the COVID impact thing, whatever.
Yep, COVID economic impact.
Yeah, well, if you've got to go for any of those online, you get the recording, so you can always fast forward to this bit you've missed. But we're just going to show you some of these other tools so that you know sort of what they look like and how else you might be able to use them.
So really quickly, this is about what it says. It's an event impact calculator, and it is. It was designed to, you know, look at what is the economic impact of certain events in your community, but it's also about visitation. You know, that's basically, you know, if we look at the crux of it, what is additional visitation mean to our community? So you can use it if you've run a marketing campaign. I know Scenic Rim Council at the moment, we're working with them around. You know, they've delivered some scenic farm boxes and things like this, and they've done different campaigns during COVID to support local tourism, and what do they think that means to the local economy. So here we've got rodeo, sport and rec, so you just pick between art and heritage, sport and rec, or business. Then when we look at our significance of the event, this is where we're drawing visitors from, okay? So if they're just from in the local Balonne Shire, we would consider them local. If they're coming from outside of the Shire, but they're still within a regional distance where they could perhaps drive home or stay one night, we would consider them region. And then we've got our state-based visitors who might stay for a prolonged period of time for that particular event. So if I just pick region, just to be safe and I'd come in here and I'd say, okay, this rodeo is happening on the 28th of August, 1-day event, and we think there's going to be 1,000 people at this particular event and we think they're all going to spend $50 each, we would run that through the model and it would tell me what the economic impact of that particular event is going to be on the Balonne Shire. So we can see, okay, this is on RDA Darling Downs.
And a buy carton of beer each.
So we can see the output is total event spend 58. So the output's total impact on the RDA Darling Downs Southwest Region economy is 58,611. That's our value add. And I don't really use local jobs because it's sort of, with events, it's a little bit convoluted. So I tend to just use that output figure. So a lot of councils would use this for things like when they're comparing what events they should support as part of their, event spending. They could use this model to be able to say, well, look, this is going to have a greater economic benefit than this particular event, or that sort of thing. Or if we put in 20,000 to this event, it's going to bring 58,000 to this. Oh, sorry.
Lorraine?
I wanted to ask a
Oh,
question if I could.
we
Is there
get her
anywhere-
off mute?
Unmute her.
Oh, thanks very much.
Sorry, Lorraine.
Okay, so my question is, do you have anywhere we can access the typical data for those kinds of events?
Still
where it
talking. Do you
says
want to tell us we
the-
can't?
Lorraine, we can't
Yeah.
hear you and we're not sure why, sorry.
Talk to us in Auslan.
She's muted.
Yep.
Unmute her.
See if I can just increase my volume.
We,
Unmute. That's muted her, so I don't know why that's not working because it's.
do you want to put it in the chat, Lorraine? I promise we'll read it and answer it. I can see the chat now.
Oh, it's not going to work. It's doing that.
Do you want to turn your volume back up again? It might echo.
That's what it is. Yeah. All right.
Here, Lorraine, I'm going to try turning. Try now. That's not. That's all right. Feel free to email us and we will get back to you. Or my number, if you want to ring us later, is 0488 11 2298. 0488 11 2298. It's publicly available on the RDA website too.
So that's the event impact calculator. So you can use that for your events to be able to showcase what they bring to the region. We've also got, and then the COVID-19 economic impacts were all about what the impact, that initial impact of COVID was. So because we've got the new data now, it's probably a little bit, it's outdated. So we've got this is September quarter 2020 compared to the September quarter 2019, and we can see we actually had a positive GRP change in Balonne Shire. And so part of that is because you guys have had a steady amount of growth since June 2020. So you've actually had some growth in your ag sector particularly.
Tells you more about rain than it does about COVID.
It does.
Paru Shire, we were there this morning, said exactly the same. They said they can nearly overlay their
Oh, yeah.
graphs.
Yeah.
And
you can
all it
see-
is the rain and then the effect is slightly
Yeah.
off.
Yep.
But you can see them together, yeah.
Although if it picked up tourism, it would show a huge benefit since June last year onwards, like double tourism value for
What a shame.
the region as well.
John Keeper's not available for drought affected businesses. I mean, what's the difference?
Yeah.
Well, that would turn around all those trades and all those education numbers.
Turn everything into.
It would turn, yeah, it would certainly turn.
So you guys could start putting together an argument about that.
We have argued directly to the National Ag Minister about it at the Ninda Gully pub. And he said, we don't have the funding for it. And then COVID came around 5 years later and everyone got it through JobKeeper.
Well,
But yeah, I'm 100% with you. That-
Batteries
I
on
don't think
schools.
people aren't in agreement.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's when we.
You guys both in ag?
I mean,
Everyone, David, you're tourism?
Tourism.
Ag tourism.
Yeah, this new.
I just came out here for a holiday and I'm still 25 years ago.
You're an extended tourist.
Yeah. I might be, I have a tutoring business that I haven't really done much with, but yeah.
The service industry.
But you're both ag businesses?
Yeah.
Ag?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the red grant is the one you'd want to look at. DAF usually open it fairly regularly, Regional Economic Development Grant. And in that is like things like extensions to businesses and stuff like that. Jason Huggins from DAF, I'm happy to email you. He's
We've been.
Yep, and Jason was doing so much stuff, Jason and Justin, but he's now moved to Tisby, but Jason was doing so much stuff on this tool that in the end I said, I will just teach you how to use the tool.
What's it called? The region, what?
Regional Economic Development Grant, put out by DAF. So you can go back and have a look at the last lot of criteria and who got awarded and all that sort of stuff if you Google it. It's due to open again because Jason and I are meeting Friday because he knows it's about to open again and we get slammed and he gets slammed. So
What's his name, Jason?
Jason Huggins. I'm happy to email you guys a link to him. It should be opening any day, but it is one of the few business grants for ag-based businesses for stuff you might want to do in there, like extensions or advanced manufacturing and stuff like that. So it's a good one. The other one that's good is Oz Industry, which is the federal government. If you're trying to turn some sort of production into a more advanced manufacturing version of that production, they've got a rollout of some grants that are around that sort of thing.
We've currently got a grant that's we received. It's a co-funded arrangement.
Like 99% of grants is co-funded.
Yeah, and it's a economic analysis, opportunity analysis of that.
Yeah, so you'll find a lot of the grants require you to have at least 50% matching funds. Again, that helps them minimise their risk and they know that you're secure. And
I was disappointed with that was that it doesn't allow any in-kind.
No, you have $50. Well, it depends on the grant, but yeah, a lot of the business ones, they want to see that a business has got actual dollars in them.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So you're going to email us the link to?
Yes, so when you get the recording, you'll have the direct link to the RDA page in that as well. We also have asked him to add in there the Treasury link. So the Queensland government have this thing called the regional profiles. And one of the questions, and this might be good for the lady who was asking me, or someone was asking me questions around a council area that's outside our region. On the Treasury regional profiles, there's a map of Queensland with the 77 local governments, and you can click on it and you can get this regional profile. It's not the economic numbers, it's more the community numbers, and it's just in a different layout. Certainly nowhere near as much as what's in ID profile, but sometimes that's handy for grants. But the reason I like it is just say, you and Gundy doing something, or your property or your footprint covers you and Gundy. Well, on our tool, the ID tool, we can't add you and Gundy together. You'd have to do that manually. But on the regional profiles, you can click you and Gundy. You could click Cooktown and you because you're going to do some project together or whatever. It adds them together for you. So in the email that Tim's sending out, he'll send you the recording from today. Just give him a second to top and tail all the tech crap out of the beginning and the end. So he'll send you the link to today's recording, the link direct to the RDA homepage, so you can just put in your favourites, you have to search for it yourself, the link to the Treasury one, the link to our grants page that we update on our website regularly. And I think maybe there was two other things while we've been talking. People are like, oh, let's add that in there. So give him a couple of days to clean it up, top and tail it, and he'll send you a live link so you can watch this recording again and all the other links.
So we just go to economy.id.com, that'll take us. So
If in the meantime, just Google Economy ID Darling Downs and you'll find it. It'll come up.
Any grant things like with ag about like climate type grants, like,
Climate change.
Like,
I get asked this a lot. She calls me the climate change
I've
guru.
been on the road with her and she's had so many questions about, like,
Random
not from
climate
our,
change.
but like, you know, emails and phone calls from other people.
I emailed you and said, put the climate clock on your page, on your grant page, because that's really important information for people to have. And Fiona wrote back and said, we're not an environmental organisation. And I thought, this is impacting economics, but I haven't got that to it yet. But.
No, we don't have that
We're
built
funded
in.
by the federal government.
Yeah, we don't have that built in. There are things like, you know, you could look at the economic impact of adding clean energy to your community or something like that. But it's all very economics driven and climate change, you're right, hasn't kind of filtered in as much to that space.
I'm really sorry for those online. If you had specific questions, as I said, I gave you my phone number. After we finish up, feel free to ring. And then we've got a lovely drive to Gundy, which, as you guys know, isn't always the best telecommunications service area. So probably straight away will be good, or if not, mid-morning tomorrow, give us a call. You've also got our email. So Tim's email is the admin @ which we've all got. Mine is just director @ and it's the same finishing to it. So feel free to email us. As I said, we'll send you the recordings. If you think of anything, you're searching for something. The main thing from today is, here's how you navigate it. Get in there and play with it. You can't break it. And then if there's something that you really need an answer for and it's not in there, well, then you've got our details to come back to and we'll do what we can. It doesn't always mean that data exists or is available, but we've got connections with ID Profile to ask what we call the Melbourne nerds, lovingly, the Melbourne nerds who sit behind all of this, and hopefully they'll get us an answer, all right? So for those of you online, thanks so much for persevering with some of the tech stuff. I put in the comments, we usually use Zoom, but this room will only do Teams, so I'll obviously need to get my Teams tech knowledge up, but I thank you all for persevering, and Tim will clean it up and you'll get a nice recording, okay? Thanks, everyone. Got some buys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trudy. Thanks, Kat.
No worries.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really